CVs don't work anymore. I mean, thanks to GPT, every CV is same.
Mm.
So then how do you have verified actionable intelligence on people which can help you in identifying the right fits early at the top of your funnel, right? Otherwise, the funnel is working inefficiently throughout. You are either missing out on hidden gems or you're getting in people who are not the right fit. How do you identify people who are better fits, right? The right
Mm.
fit for your role and your organization. And this means that you need to identify one, like what do you need to assess them on. We define what communication skills they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also define their cognitive skills. This can be in colloquial terms. It can be your cognition, it can be your intelligence, critical thinking, learning agility. What all those markers do you need to succeed? And lastly, in terms of behavior and personality.
Hello. Hi, Vini. Welcome to the CuHRious Tech. Thank you so much
Hi,
for
Rana.
doing this and excited
Hi,
for you to
Rana.
be here. Hi, how are you
Thank you
doing?
so much. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Been following the great work you've been doing. Really
Thank
enjoying
you.
your last few episodes as well. So yeah, looking
Thank
forward
you.
to our
And,
chat.
and yeah, and I'm also pretty excited to do this because I've also been following Unberry. I know we sort of connected almost like a year and a half back when you guys had just started, but super excited to talk and understand Unberry and understand the problems you're solving. But Vinny, before we get started, for everyone listening in, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself? Who is Vinny and what is Vinny up to?
Beginning of my career, I'm an engineer. Then I moved on to Deloitte, got introduced to technology over there almost 15 years back, and it immediately clicked with me. I was solving for business problems using technology. Fell in love with what the world of business was, and then went on to do my masters in Excel. After my course, I went to GSK. I started my career in the field of marketing. So I with the likes of GSK, Nestle,
Mhm.
not just as brand manager, but kind of as business owner. That's how, kind of grew myself. Went on to healthcare to set up a business vertical for them. And now I'm and the most common question that I get is, hey, you're from Excel and you have not done any HR roles and now you're operating in HR tech. So, I mean, how is that happening? So I think that's the most common question I get.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've seen the same thing happen. Like most people who are not HR actually solving HR problems, like myself included. When I started up, I knew nothing of HR, but it's I've seen that like a lot of founders non-HR but face a personal problem and then feel it a deep enough problem to go ahead and solve it. And I think that's a perfect way for me then to ask you the next question. Like, how did all this begin? Right? What were the problems that you saw which led to Unberry, the birth and genesis of Unberry?
There are two things over here. I think there is what I went through, there is what I spoke about, and then there is a bigger landscape or reality, a context that we all need to have before we kind of address the problem in a bigger scenario. Um, so let's do a quick thing. Let's do a time travel.
Mm-hmm.
You and I time traveled 15 years before. That's when I started my career. I first entered into the world of work. Um, And let's imagine what the workplaces were there at that point in time. How does the talent journey look at that point in time versus today? Few things that probably I think um, would come to your mind is at that point in time, workplaces were dominated by these cubicles and cabins, right? You had face-to-face
Mm-hmm.
meetings, 9 to 5
Yeah.
setups. You had hierarchies and fixed corporate structures, right? Technology, smartphone just came in, they were impacting our work lives not as much as they are today. There was a lot of manual data entry. Skype used to be the technology marvel back then. The kind of skills that people focused on were more on traditional skills. You could build your career out of those skills, right? People will, even in tech, people will in the same tech for years, for decades, and they build their career in
Mm-hmm.
just couple of technologies. um, there was a lot of focus on attitude, on work ethic, process orientation, commitment, proficiency in things like MS Office. I mean, that was a job requirement. Um, and industries took, so much amount of time to be formed. Global expansion was ambitious. So the world then versus world now is like it has changed so much. Today, when you see, I mean, the workplaces, the roles, the industries are forming up probably in less than a year. New roles are coming up in existing functions. Tech stacks
Mm-hmm.
are changing in less than 18 months. The entire workforce need to upskill themselves in like, another 3 to 5 years. Leadership just does not need these soft skills. You need to have a tech bent of mind. You have all these
Mm.
leadership courses in Gen AI, and CTOs are founders. So there is so much that has changed in the world of work itself. And everyone is feeling that shift who has been in the landscape. So this is the broader landscape. Now, what I went through, during while I was operating, I think the first thing was, as I was progressing, I was building and scaling my own teams. And anyone who is in a business role, at some point in time, they have to leave everything else. And they have, having the right team and the right talent is probably
Mm.
the most core issue that they have to resolve. So a lot of people would have faced the problem where they would have left everything at their hand just to get the right talent in, right? And
Mm.
similarly, even probably to keep the right talent. Business is, a lot of business is about, it cannot be without people, one, right? So you
Mm.
cannot not be thinking about business and not solving for talent or people problems. So anyone who has been part of a business probably also understands and is also kind of very much invested in the talent journeys any organization has. So
Mm.
that I came from that aspect. Um, uh, while I was having my journey in the business, I also kind of faced the brunt of making wrong hires, bad talent decisions,
Mm.
um, not having enough information to kind of make right decisions. And I met my co-founders. So they are second-time
Mm.
entrepreneurs, and they were facing similar issues. They were doing some POCs. We came in together and we said that, hey, this is a landscape which probably is stagnant for a really long period of time. And there is something that we can do here. So it started from our own personal experience. It started from the landscape being pretty stagnant for a long period of time. And that's how Unberry kind of began.
Interesting. It's true. I mean, wrong hires, we've sort of all done that, right? And I guess, like you said, it touches everyone in the business, right? If you're in business, you're hiring, and the more you're senior in the company, right, the responsibility of hiring comes to you. And I think, yeah, the cost of a wrong hire is extremely high, right? Been there, done that. But I mean, thanks for sharing that. But I'm curious now, like, so that's the problem statement, right? You've encountered problems, and sort of, I think everyone listening in will resonate with those, right? You all face those problems. But I'm very curious about how what was your thought process behind what would be the ideal solution for this, right? How do we tackle these problems, and how are you solving it through tech?
Right. When I was facing these problems, I think that I could identify the problem, but I did not know how pervasive this problem was. So, when we were thinking about Unberry, the next obvious step was to speak to more and more people, and this included HR leaders, TA leaders, CXOs, founders, and just speak
Mm-hmm.
to everyone who kind of was, and to see whether they are struggling with these talent, different issues in the talent journey as well, right? Are talent decisions as hard for everyone to make, or is there um, uh, or is it happening in pockets, right? Is it a smaller organization phenomena, bigger organization phenomena? And the most interesting part is, no matter how big organization or how small organization is, everyone is facing the issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? So no one is spared from the brunt of it. So the synthesis came out to be in form of, I won't talk about the regular matrix, time, cost, quality. All of that is known for, spoken a lot about. I would speak in terms of the funnel in which we get people in, the candidate funnel, the hiring funnel, and then through which the people stay back in
Mm-hmm.
any organization. So, for example, if we have a hiring funnel, there are people in the top, right, who come after we have opened a new position. These people, when they come into the funnel, for example, 100 people are there, right? Largely the sourcing issue has been resolved, because in last 10-15 years there have been different platforms that have come in for tech and
Mm-hmm.
business roles, and last 2 to 3 years there also the frontline issue for sourcing has been resolved to a great extent. So the next thing that needs to be resolved is, how do you identify people who are better fits, right? The right
Mm-hmm.
fit for your role and your organization. And this means that you need to identify, one, that what do you need to assess them on, which is a very big challenge. What to assess people on? What are those markers which are relevant for that particular role and that organization? How do you identify that? The second thing was, then how do you assess these people? And that is where the entire aspect of assessment came in. Um, uh, we all have gone through assessments. We have used assessments on either side of the table, and very surprisingly, assessment as a landscape hasn't evolved much since a decade or so. Probably the last big change came in was when paper pen assessments were evolved to the form of assessments, digitized. And then there were all these innovations happening in isolation. Somewhere you'll hear that tech has evolved into coding assessments, or there is a game-based assessment coming in, or something else, some experiential form is coming in, or a communication form of Versant. But there is nothing which would help address the entire aspect of evaluating talent, all the skills and competencies that you need. And to add to it, CVs don't work anymore. I mean, thanks to GPT, every CV is same. So then, how do you have verified, actionable intelligence on people, which can help you in identifying the right fits early at the top of your funnel, right? Otherwise, the funnel is working inefficiently throughout. You are either missing out on hidden gems, or you're getting in people who are not the right fit, and then your funnel is not working fine. And so that is where the assessment piece, I think, is a big challenge. And then comes your interviewing again, which is a very tedious, very time consuming task. And if you have not identified the right skills, the right competencies, how are you standardizing the process? How are you managing the effort which is being taken in? And after all of that, there are still people who are not the right fit for organization who come inside, right? These people, it is not just then the impact on the productivity. You've been filling for that particular role for X amount of time. They come into organization, they are not happy. Their journey to grow in the organization, their journey to probably have internal mobility, L&D. How do you design all of that if that fit or that enough information about them is not there? You don't know what their gaps are. You don't know what to groom them on. So that so there are 3 talent journeys, and all of them are broken. So we identified the core engine over here is basically to have verified, actionable intelligence on people, and then we built on top of that, which was the first thing that we launched last year, which was Unberry assessments.
Got it. So you're right. Like the so okay. So let me take a step back here. So there's assessments, right? You spoke of what do you assess on, right? Like getting that part correct. And I'm very curious to understand how maybe if you want to just share screen and show like how is Unberry solving that? Because you can like, give either run of the mill assessments, right? Just one fit for everyone. But I'm sure that's not the solution, right? You need to customize and it needs to be different for different, nuanced for different people. Would love to see how the tool is solving for that.
Okay. So I'm taking a normal JD over here. For example, an organization is hiring for head of their data science. There are certain skills and competencies. There's a normal job description which will come in, which will define what is the role that they have to do, right? Their roles and responsibilities, and in line what kind of experience they should come up with. If there are probably any kind of values, etc., that are important as well, right? All of this goes to candidate. If a JD is well crafted, it helps them, but what is also equally important for an organization is also to have the framework on which this person is going to be evaluated as well, because there are multiple layers across which we evaluate anyone coming in, which can be assessments, which can be multiple round of interviews, and triangulate all of that to arrive at something which is more concrete, which is more objective. I think this is where the first piece is broken, that are we able to create that particular framework objectively? um, we kind of went back and said that how can this be one automated, be available for everyone? There are open source frameworks which are there. For example, there is Onit, or there is Singapore skills framework, or there is European framework. There is not enough time into the organization for someone to sit to identify, this is my job. Is this particular framework more suitable for me, or that particular framework, should I use multiple frameworks and then come up with what skills are important, and all of that, right? And then I have my JD as well. I'm what I need might be a little more custom versus some of these frameworks which are out there. So we said that if we can marry the two, which is what the org needs and what are these frameworks saying, and come up with a map, a sort of framework sort of thing that is custom for them, that solves purpose for a lot of organizations. Now, some purists, obviously, I mean, they'll say that, yeah, just stick to one framework. That might be a great approach, but this works in general for organizations across small and big scale, and it is a far more nuanced way to have a benchmark to evaluate people, have a framework to evaluate people, versus having nothing at all. So we take in
Got
all the
it.
information on the JD, and then we generate this particular framework where we define what kind of functional or technical skills they should possess. We also define probably what level they would be needed depending on all of the input that goes in. We define what communication skills they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
We also define their cognitive skills. This can be in colloquial terms. It can be your cognition, it can be your intelligence, critical thinking, learning agility. What all those markers do you need to succeed? And lastly, in terms of behavior and personality. This is kind of as exhaustive as it can get in terms of what all do
Mm.
you need. It might not get covered in one particular round itself. It is not just limited to probably an assessment or only your interviews, but at least it sets the right framework, and then you can see what is best suited for what mechanism, I would say.
Got it. That's interesting. I have a couple of questions. So, going back a little one step on the GD, right? So, all of this starts in having a very beautifully crafted, well crafted GD, right? I saw something, this one right with AI. So, I assume that that's a big problem, right? A lot of people are not able to, I won't say lack of intent is obviously there, but the expertise may not be there to really write a GD, because the GD should be what they are doing, what are the skills, what are the values, like you said, what are the competencies, behavioral side also should be covered. So
Yeah,
that button, I guess, sort of helps you craft that JD, right? If the JD
yeah,
is not correct enough. Understood.
yeah.
Okay, one more question on this. So let's say, so you've on your backend engine, you have so for AI there'll be a certain set of framework you use. Let's say for somebody who's coming in sales, so the field sales executive would be different. Somebody who's from the HR world would be different, right? So at the backend you have those frameworks, right? And how is that
Yes.
matching happening? Is it AI, or like it's a mix of like what the frameworks are there and it's matching it? Is it?
Yeah, yeah. So we begin the open source frameworks, which are already
Okay.
very reputed ones. And um, um, I think the version that you're seeing right now, this version you're not seeing probably the option to choose one as well. So if someone wants to stick to one particular framework, for example, I want to stick to own it only, then all the skills and
Hmm.
competencies will be populated basis that. If you want a custom version like this, which is a combination of what your organization or role needs plus all the reputed frameworks say, then it will be a combination of that, and then you get in something like this, which can be done. You also kind of picked on that creating that JD part, which is
Hmm.
very interesting as well. I did not consciously speak about it a lot, because creating a JD is the most oversold use case for Gen AI by every HR tech
Yeah.
and TA tool which is there.
Yeah.
And everyone, when asked, "Do you have Gen AI?" everyone says, "Yes, we can create JDs on our tool." So I wanted to kind of push the needle and say that, look, this is taken for. You have ChatGPT as well, which people are using in their
Hmm.
individual capacity as well. So a tool should be able to do much more than that, and that is where uh, the tool is capable of creating JDs as well. And we spoke about what it can do beyond as well.
I'll take a quick segue from this. There's something interesting on assessments, right? Assessments are quite popular now with tech, right? It's become part of the process. But in your experience, and given that like, you've been doing this for a long time, why hasn't it picked off with business roles? I rarely hear of assessments in business roles. Now, while you were talking, I was just thinking this. Have you seen this? Is it just a thing that I've seen, or is it historically been not so popular with business?
You're absolutely right. I think assessment as a landscape, I think fun fact, but it kind of, in all recorded format, it exists 2,500 years back. In China, they were hiring people for roles, checking on Confucian, knowledge of Confucian theories and such. And then, we hear about all these industrial era coming up and people being checked for their intelligence and, bunch of other things. In this entire scheme of things, what happened was that cognition, the proxy to evaluate someone's cognition, because became their knowledge of, you know, if I mean I don't want to pull it down, but 2 plus 2 equal to 4, so basic maths, etc., logical reasoning. The proxy for communication became reading comprehension. So you read a bunch of information, tick a few MCQ, grammar, vocabulary. But actually, what communication is, how you and I speak, express ourselves, write. So how the information is structured,
Hmm.
communicated. that entire piece is communication. And for business roles, all of this is very important. But what business roles ultimately narrowed down to was evaluation of probably the proxies or communication and cognition and personality. What was missing on was evaluation of their exact functional skills, the evaluation of exact
Hmm.
communication skills, because the proxies weren't working,
Hmm.
and behaviors can only take up so much or tell so much about person, and to some extent they're also self-reported. A lot of behavioral exercises or
Hmm.
personality exercises are self-reported as well.
Hmm.
That is where the entire adoption of assessments got restricted to wherever it showed the most proximity to showing the proof of work, which was the technical or the coding
Hmm.
assessments, where you were
Makes
doing
sense.
exactly what you were actually doing on job. So that, that's my understanding of the landscape.
Got it. No, that's fair. It's easier, in fact. What you said, easier, much easier to do it in tech. That's how we sort of default to it. But we still
Yeah,
sort of rely on interviews and our human judgment, right? But I'm curious to go back to the tool and sort of complete that thread. What's next? Like, we've uploaded the JD. You've given the frameworks. Post that, how does the tool work through?
right. Let me take you on the assessment space now.
Hmm.
I'll show you what the candidate goes through, and then I'll break it down into how probably the recruiter or the hiring manager would have designed that experience for them on
Got it.
Unberry. And I'll pick up
Got it.
a non-technical role for a business role for
Let's
us to
let's do
probably
that.
discuss. So what a candidate gets is probably a link like this in their email that will say that XYZ company has invited to you for an experience assessment. All of this is customizable. You get a link. The candidate clicks on the link, and they enter their email and they enter into an environment which is about the assessment, right? When this assessment has been designed, what all they go through it, I'm going to pick up, for example, a sales role.
Hmm.
We spoke when we spoke about the resume, we broke down all the things into a framework which had four buckets. We do
Hmm.
it similarly for sales role as well. So, we say, and here what we see is kind of a buffet. Things are these competencies can be less depending on the exact role, or depending upon how much time do we want to invest in terms of evaluating the candidate. For example, when we're evaluating functional skills, it can check in their knowledge about the sales cycle, when they are meeting a customer, when they are doing objection handling, when there's a query, their customer focus during sales, pre-sales, post-sales, their communication skills, as I was speaking, beyond the regular grammar, vocabulary, listening skills. Are we checking in things like their speaking and writing skills, cognition, beyond their ability to demonstrate aptitude or logical reasoning? Can we evaluate them from neuroscience aspect, which can be competencies required at work, like their attention span, their processing speed, or the ability to do multiple, multitask. Um, and then behavioral and personality competencies. These
Hmm.
all are um, taken in line with the role, right? For example, for someone who is in sales, they really need to be resilient because they face multiple rejections, right? So they
Hmm.
need to be at it to um, achieve what they are set out to be. Or a lot of sales role actually need a lot of achievement orientation, right? So are you able to identify rather than having generic roles, and these can be further curated as per the exact role. For example, if you're hiring for B2B role, then check exactly the skills which are needed there. FMCG role, check for if they understand the pipeline management, channel management, pricing, etc. If you're hiring for a B2C role, check those skills. So we have all of those different repositories in our system. How do
Got it.
they look like
And
is
sorry, just
something
one
I'm going to
question
tell
here.
you.
The company can
Yeah.
pick and choose, right? Let's say there's a nuance to uh, their company and the way they operate. They can obviously choose, right? Like,
Yes.
this is the set of questions I want, or I want to add this nuance to it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of functional and communication aspect is actually chosen and also curated for the company as well, to build in, for example, industry or company specific aspect as well, or certain concepts that can be done as well. Behavior and personality or cognitive instruments, these would be something that would be developed after research. So we'll come in and say that, these would be something that probably will not be customizable. So we'll let them know.
Hmm.
But
Got
still,
it.
what overall, I mean, there are two layers of customization. One is the content part of it, and the second is the competencies itself. So you are also
Hmm.
not married to a particular framework as well. You can have your own framework and say, for example, I do not want to measure hypothetically cognition, right? I mean, well and good, we cannot do that as well.
Understood. You know what's broken, at least from my experience in what's happening today, right? We are all, and I use the word we as sort of the experience that I've seen in all companies, right? You look at roles and responsibilities, you look at communication for sure, right? And you're interviewing for that. You look at behavioral. Uh, Cognition is something that we don't really check, right? We barely really think about it, and so that's happening across, right, for all roles. Because for sales, the one that you were seeing, super important, right? But I mean, I myself hire for a lot of sales, right? 90% of our org is sales, but never has it occurred us to look at cognition. It's very interesting. uh, Again, curious to look at
So let me take you through, some of the modules. How do they look like?
mhm.
For example, when we say that we want to measure or know more about their knowledge about their entire sales cycle, they will be served with different scenarios that come from different stages of sales cycle, where they will need to do objection
Got it.
handling, do negotiation, etc. There's a situation with optimal and suboptimal answers. Are they able to navigate through that, right? Similarly, customer focus. These all are situations where you
Hmm.
need to demonstrate functional experience, right? There can
Hmm.
be a functional direct knowledge as well, which can be checked via MCQ, which is, for example, do you know pricing in a certain about FMCG channel or something,
Hmm.
the core terms which are being there, something of that sort. So we pick it from our repository depending on what the exact JD is, which is what we saw earlier. This is where the needle stops across most of the evaluation, which happens in terms of functional context. One, the latest skills are not there. Two, they might not be evaluated in a business context, but more from a theoretical context, right? Or probably it's being taught in schools and colleges. So how you're checking that is important. But third is also the medium in you check. These were guided format in terms of checking. What we also bring is probably how these skills, which is probably in spoken and written format, demonstrate the.
Oh, nice.
So what we enable is coming up with small case studies or questions which are actually relevant to the role.
Hmm.
For example, for a salesperson, can you check how do they bring back an unresponsive customer? Can they think about it and re-engage them back? Or can they understand the competition landscape, things like that. We evaluate spoken and written case studies in such format. These case studies enable the person to demonstrate their knowledge about a dynamic question in real time, right? And every answer then is recorded, so any interviewer can see the and hear the recorded answer as well. But along with that, what they get is evaluation across two layers. So we
Hmm.
enable English speaking skill evaluation, right?
Hmm.
So pronunciation, fluency, grammar, clarity, vocabulary. These are base rubrics of IELTS and CEFOR. So we evaluate English spoken skills evaluation, and along with that, we also generate how relevant was their answer to any such dynamic case. What this enables is it allows the person to demonstrate knowledge relevant to the workplace, and we can customize. I mean, for some roles, probably English speaking skills is not important. You give the maximum weightage to relevance, and you, I mean, get to know whether the person is knowing about that particular topic or not. So things like this.
Understood. But how exactly is this happening? So they're speaking, right? And you have the algorithm at the back end where you're reading, understanding, and matching it, right, to what's the ideal answer.
Right. So there are two layers which are working over here. There's a layer of ML. The layer of ML basically evaluates their speaking skills, and it's been trained to generate scores basis data of thousands of people across the globe across different ethnicities. So it will
Hmm.
generate a CEFR or a IELTS score and say that this was their English speaking skill. So that is one layer that we have integrated. The other layer is GPT-4. So we have built in that,
Hmm.
and then we have built our own layers where we can define competency. For example, here the person needed to demonstrate basic sales knowledge, and that is defined in a certain way. So then the relevance for that particular competency, with the context of the question, the answer is being evaluated, and then a score is being generated. And then we build further layers to kind of give weightages to both the skills, because communication
Hmm.
is a combination. And for some organizations, both might be important. Or for some organization, for example, only the relevance is important. So we generate scores in line. So what we
Got it.
saw was the functional part of it. You can have different modules which are
Hmm.
curated in our system, for tech, business, frontline, all the different kind of roles. And they are being picked up depending on what the requirement for the role is. They can be audio written case studies. Um, there's a very interesting, there can be these basic communication checks as well, which can be about your verbal ability, about your active listening, reading comprehension, grammar. I'm not showing them because, most of the
Hmm.
people would
Sure.
have already seen them. I would like to show something very unique.
Hmm.
Um, we can also enable a lot of communication which happens in terms of chat, right? These can happen in your the sales role also have become extremely chat oriented in a lot of case. So we can
Hmm.
also enable evaluating these chat conversations. For example, here someone is looking for a logistics partner, and this can be a chat simulation which can be timed for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You can explain the entire context. What is the goal that you need to have achieve out of this entire chat? And that entire chat evaluation can be done, which can create in detailed reports about how someone took the entire
Hmm.
experience, whether they were able to achieve the objective, how were their communication skills. You can go in and see the entire chat history. You can see if they exhibited the sales techniques, adaptability, problem solving, communication skills, plus also get the scores on writing skills in terms of SEPR, etc. So using immersive
Hmm.
exercises like these, where you are not just restricting to probably the old methods of communication, but also allowing people to speak, to demonstrate in the environments which are there at work today. These also help recruiters a lot because they are actually
Hmm.
evaluating what people do at work, right? So kind of stuff like that. Then we spoke about cognition. So
Hmm.
we have the regular exercises where we cover things like aptitude, logical reasoning, critical reasoning. Again, we all would have seen them, taken them, so not showing them. But we have
Hmm.
our own repository of game-based assessments. These are neuroscience tasks which have existed out there for decades. They kind of measure the neuroscience, how your brain is wired from neuroscience aspect. So measure things like your working memory, processing speed, attention span, and also kind of indicate higher order cognition
Hmm.
like fluid intelligence, etc. So we kind and multitasking. So we have our repository will pick things depending on what the role is.
And this is
And the last
gamified,
is
right? This the whole cognition part of
yes.
things. Got it.
Yeah. So these are game-based assessments. Actually, they
Hmm.
are one step ahead of gamified assessments. So gamified assessment is actually gamifying a normal assessment. For example, 2 plus 2 equal to 4. So 2 would come flying in, a 4 would come flying in when you
Hmm.
click 4.
Understood.
So what? Yeah. So that is gamified. Game-based is where you're in actual game environment and dealing with a dynamic situation. So these are game-based
Got it.
assessments. And the last is checking in competencies which are relevant to behaviors or personality. So there can be a personality profiler, there can be immersive exercises, situation judgment test. I mean, whatever is fit in terms of administering for that particular profile. And yeah,
Got it. Got it. So this is the candidate side of things. And again, I have to ask, like, it looks like a whole UI is like really clean and good looking, right? Is there again, this my curiosity, like, have you seen a correlation between, like, really good giving a good candidate experience, right? Because the whole interview process per se is not very candidate friendly, right? I'm saying across India, right? We Because there's such a mismatch, we don't really think much about the candidate experience, right? People famously show up late to interviews, burden people with too many assignments which are not paid, and then ultimately reject them. Have you seen a correlation? Is there a specific reason why you've, like, made everything very aesthetically beautiful, and you've seen a correlation between giving a good experience Was this a good score, or how does it work?
Uh, so when we were doing our understanding the landscape, how does it function,
Hmm.
your observation is bang on. We were looking at different platforms, and the candidate completion rate was lying between 30 to 50% mostly, and that
Hmm.
is the norm across that. That is where a lot of recruiters don't want to give assessments, because they come in and say that, hey, this is the layer where most of my candidates drop in. I don't want to lose candidates
Hmm.
without even having them into the funnel. And we said that this is where the bottleneck is, because you are trying to gather in information from them, which is verified to some extent, but their experience is super shitty. They are
Hmm.
not enjoying the entire process, and that is where it's falling flat. So whatever they need to experience, one, it should be meaningful for them. But if you see all the different exercises they do, they really understand that they're being evaluated for things which are relevant for their workplace, rather than something hypothetical. The second is, um, experience matter because it speaks a lot about the organization as well.
Hmm.
We have a lot of candidates who go into interviews speaking about how great their experience was. In the end of every Unberry experience, we ask the candidate to rate us, because that is like a litmus test for ourselves. And we get in like these, like almost like a overwhelming experience that they would have been, because it is just so experiential, good UI, and obviously it is far differentiated, so that also creates a very strong
Hmm.
employer brand. And on top of that, probably that 30 to 50% assessment completion rate, that stands anywhere between 85 to 90 to 93% for us. So for laterals it might be between 85-90%. For freshers it's far higher. But um, people stick through good experiences, and that
Of
pays
course.
to the
Yeah.
company as well. You're able to widen the funnel. You're able to identify, because the insights are very deep, and because there are a lot of people finishing the assessments, you're able to identify right fits earlier. Um, and you're able to also kind of gather the data for more and more people, so works in
Hmm.
favor for both.
Makes sense. There's a bad hot take in our HR world where some people are like, "Hey, we'll give the worst experience and make it the most difficult for candidates because jisko aana hai, they will pass through it."
Yeah.
I don't buy into it because what's happening is we all know this, right? The best candidates don't really stick around to be pushed, right? They're not going to stick around with bad shitty experiences, like you said. Cool. Again, I would love to continue the flow and just see how it is. This is the candidates, right? But how is it also on the employer or the admin, whatever you call it, their side?
You asked
Hmm.
what does the recruiter get. So this is what an individual output or a report looks like. It's
Hmm.
color coded in a traffic light format. So red are the bottom 20-25 percentile, yellows below average, greens and dark greens are above average. So there is a overall score which is generated. And then there are scores generated for all the different competencies which were assessed during that assessment. For
Hmm.
example, in functional skills, we assessed about business development. You can go in and see what all did they answer, where all they were lacking on what concepts, and probe them deeper. Similarly, can hear what answers, or read what answers did they give in different speaking and writing exercises. Also see the evaluation for that. Um, Also, similarly for all the different exercises that happen for cognition and behavior as well. All the reports are so all the assessments are actually AI proctored as well, so you get to see the images are flagged if the person is looking away from the screen, or
Hmm.
there's a third
It's
person
interesting.
present. We report the tab switches, etc.
S-
as well.
so this is only desktop based or it's mobile also from the
It is
candidate
mobile
side?
as well.
Okay.
Yeah, for candidates. Actually, a lot of assessments on our platform also happen for frontline roles, right?
Hmm.
So they happen, actually, candidates prefer taking them on mobile phones, and then we enable, for example, if they really are the entry level roles, and for example, there the candidates do not even have like a set email ID. We enable, for example, getting the link to them on a SMS something, So we
Hmm.
enable SMS rather than an email. So we have one, make the entire interface ready for, I mean, we have
Hmm.
the entire interface working for mobile phones as well, and also the functionalities are curated in line.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. But is there like a summary that people see this? I'm just thinking out loud, right? There's an obvious use case for this in campus, right? I'm sure like you've had clients who've used this to do bulk hiring. Like campus is like a proxy for bulk hiring, where you're doing, I don't know, like 100, 200, right, in a day. Um, I'm sure, and I can really think of a lot of use cases there. Like, but for like an end user, right? For me using it, how does the dashboard look for me? Because I'll probably not want to go into all the details for everyone. I'll probably want to rank order, look at the first top 10, right? Whatever top means. How does the dashboard look for like the recruiter, manager, whatever you call them?
Um, I'll actually show you a live dashboard for one of our clients that's probably, hiring. Uh, there are
Oh,
thousands of
that's lovely.
assessments happening every day, right? So, this is actually a campus drive, and you go to multiple campuses on the same day, and this is what the recruiter interface would look like, right? You would get to know
Oh wow,
at the
that's
top level
amazing.
in a color coded format, right? Whether the report has gone through or not. One that we can sort all of this by highest fit score. So, for example, the
Hmm.
entire perspective is to identify people who probably are right fits, and can we prioritize them into the hiring funnel? That can be one actionable insight out of all of this. So that can be done. Second, from a campus point of view, pool performance is very important as well. So, one of our clients, they said that last year when hiring budgets were really tight, they
Hmm.
were going to tier one or tier two colleges. We want to go to next set of colleges, but we want to retain the people in the same band. So here, the number of people probably reduced for them, but they were still able to hire people who were performing similarly across the test as well. So, those kind of application areas also come across to us,
So I didn't
and all
understand
of these
what
insights.
sorry, what does that 6.9% mean?
It
So the
means that
pool
there were
performance.
6.9% people. It meant that there were 6.9% of the people who were lying in the top cohort, which is probably the top,
Oh,
which
okay,
is,
okay, okay. That's color
I think,
coded. Got it.
scoring, yeah, above a certain benchmark. Yes. Yeah.
Understood.
And all of these insights are downloadable in Excel as well. So, they can as very well download the
Hmm.
data. They can slice and dice through it, and they can also share it internally if that's easier. Otherwise, all the reports have a sharing link as well. So, it
Hmm.
just gets copied from here, and recruiter, whenever they're scheduling the next round, they can go and paste in your email or calendar invite, and the hiring manager this then sets the base for them to start their conversation.
Oh, lovely, lovely. That looked really cool. I have like sort of like a again another segue, right? This is we are still on the top, right, top of the funnel, which is assessment, right? But we also a little touched upon little bit on the problems that the recruiters face, right? So when you're taking interviews, right, there's one side which is assessment. This obviously solves a large part of it, right? But when you're taking interviews also, there's a lot of problems there also, right? I mean, I can go on, but uh, what are the problems that you've seen that the recruiters today are facing, and how do you see tech helping solve those problems?
Uh, there are a bunch of conversations that come to
Mhm.
my mind when we talk about the problems that are faced by recruiters, hiring managers, taking
Mm.
interviews. There's a company that's interviewing 8,000 people every month. There are 500 people who are managing this entire thing, and they're hiring 2,000 people. They're interviewing 8,000 people to ultimately hire 2,000 people. And they absolutely have no system where, one, they can standardize how these people are evaluated, and to have any sort of feedback for these people. The best probably what an interviewer is able to do is give feedback for someone they have hired, but for all the people they have not hired, which is probably to the tune of 6,000 people, they do not know why they are getting rejected, right?
Mm.
um, I was speaking to someone in an executive search firm, and they said that they are hiring for leadership positions, and they are able to do max 3 to 4 interviews. Four is a stretch for them because there's just so much to record in every conversation that has happened, and then probably report, because you want to obviously also have the right amount of information being captured for every conversation about that particular profile. There is an interviewer, a hiring manager. They said that today I took 3 back-to-back interviews, and by the end of third interview, I did not remember what did I actually speak in with. I mean, in my first conversation, and that is
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
legit problem to have.
Happened to me
You
also.
don't
Yeah.
you don't get time to record, and in the end, it becomes a blur. Um, there is just so much amount of time spent in marrying the profile with the JD with every CV that comes in, figure out what to ask, and in the end, then curate all of that um, information so that it leads to a feedback that is usable. It can be anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes per interview, or
Mm.
even maybe more when you're
More,
doing
yeah.
for senior positions. And even if you're doing 10 interviews across different stages, so there's round 1, round 2, round 3, multiple people coming into your funnel, and 10 is a very conservative number, but on an average, even if there are 10 interviews happening, you're losing what, I mean, 7 hours,
Mm.
8 hours, or even maybe more in just recording the feedback. So
Mm.
that is a very big gap in terms of um, the entire ops piece of it. And then there are a lot of organization facing challenges with training of managers. Are my managers
Mm.
conducting interviews effectively? Are they
Mm.
asking right questions? Are interviews happening effectively? That is another big um, qualitative piece that organizations are trying to solve. So overall, I think this entire layer um,
Mm.
can definitely benefit with technology.
I'll add one problem statement to this, biases. Right? A lot of you have your own set of biases, and everyone has their own set of biases, which they bring to those interviews, right? And ultimately, you're making hiring decisions, and you don't even know the biases, or mostly these are unconscious biases. I think there's another one of calibration. Like one of my example, we were hiring for a role, and a particular set, 2 or 3 from the same team of interviewers kept on rejecting, right? Like a string of like 10, 15 CVs got rejected, and after that we went in and we sort of did a calibration, and they had a completely different sort of expectation from the role, right? What the role was, what you were supposed to actually evaluate, and that way you lost 15,
Right.
20 candidates, right? And it's not like we can go back and say, hey, sorry, we screwed up, right? So you're right, yeah. Curious to see how you guys are solving for that.
I think I was just speaking about exact same problem with someone last week, where they said that for all our frontline sales manager, they were being evaluated on problem solving skills, whereas the number
Mm.
1 or 2 skill for them had to be, the grit, the ability to
Mm.
learn, and they had a few other markers. So I think what you said kind of is bang on. That are they being evaluated on
Mm.
the right set of competencies? That's pretty relevant as well.
There's no way for us to know
So I
this
think this
also,
is,
right? I mean, we don't
yeah,
record, so we had to sit and ask, and of course they were not honest at the beginning, but then when we probed, anyway, sorry, I interrupted. Love to see your tech solution to this.
this is our upcoming tech solution, Ranak, coming on your podcast for the very first time,
Oh wow, drum roll, drum roll.
right? I'm showing you one of the interviews that was recorded
Mhm.
on the solution. Uh, so there is a JD which comes in, which talks about all the different roles and responsibilities that ultimately tie back to the different competencies.
Mhm.
There is a CV that comes in that talks about their experience.
Mhm.
Once this is fed into the system, an Unberry interview can be set up for a conversation between interviewer and the interviewee. So
So this is the candidate, right, who's got a link.
this is the interviewer setting up
Okay, okay, got it.
the, yeah, this can be a your recruiter also. They can set it up for both the parties. This is the environment in which the AI assisted interview happened. Here, the interviewer has access to prompts. These prompts, and these are interview questions which come in from the inputs that we fed in, which is the JD and the CV of the candidate.
Mhm.
That can contain in more information, for example, any other skills, competencies which are required, any values which are critical to the company. And what happens over here is that the interviewer gets relevant prompts in terms of what they should be asking. What we are also building in is their ability to customize what sort of questions they want to ask. Which is, for example, I want to ask behavioral questions. I want to ask questions from their CV. Are there any gaps, etc. I want to ask more functional questions, more industry or landscape questions. They can keep on asking, and it will show the relevant, prompts to them as the entire interview happens. These are all suggested by the AI.
Amazing. And you're picking all of this up from the CV.
It comes in from both, all the information that we fed in. We fed the CV and the JD as well.
Okay, got it.
During this
Got it.
piece, yeah, they can also kind of keep on taking notes and recording their thoughts as well, which is also very essential when you're doing the interview. A lot of
Of course.
notes lie in a thought format, which is a handwritten scribble or something, and you're looking for that when you're trying to write the entire feedback. So kind of also capturing all of that when the entire conversation is happening in one format. This is what the report looks like. Just kind of moved fast, but the report will do a few things. It will give a full transcript of what the conversation was. A lot of times, if you have taken 3 back-to-back interviews, you can go back and see this is what we actually spoke about, and it brings you back to what the conversation was. It will also, in a very neat format, list down what were the topics which were discussed and what were the answers which were given, if you don't want to read through the entire transcript, because it is a more concise, summarized version. It will also do the evaluation by the system itself, which obviously the interviewer can edit, but it will say that XYZ skills and competencies were assessed, and um, and these were the scores which were generated on them, which the interviewer can add their feedback as well. So you, for example, feel that this has rated 8 versus you had some other thoughts in mind, you can add in your thoughts, etc. So all of that can also happen. But what this does is it basically evaluates everyone across the same set of skills and competencies, records everything exhaustively that happened over there, and gives the interviewer a ready base to work upon. Now you don't need to kind of tabulate all of these things. You can just add in your final touches, and it takes far less time versus writing a feedback from scratch.
Got it. This is amazing. This is really cool. I mean, I can imagine this as a link gets generated to the next round of interviewer, right? They can look at this, and so
Yeah.
multiple rounds of interviews when they happen. There's one consolidation that happens at the end. Is it?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. In the end, a
Got it.
consolidated report is generated, which will have your assessment scores.
Hmm.
It will also have feedback from all the different interview rounds, and you can triangulate. So, again, the same conversation that I was speaking to you about, that I had last week. There, round one happens, round two happens, round three happens. Then everyone comes in for a debrief,
Correct.
and then everyone puts across that this is my assessment. We also know about companies that have, for example, said 6 7 values, and then all of those values, 3 or 4 would be assessed, and there will be overlaps between 5 or 6 different interview rounds. Triangulation of all of that information to arrive to a conclusion, that is a very big gap as well. It is very time consuming for everyone to come for every candidate and then triangulate all of that and then arrive. Now the system does that. System brings in that all of this is your recorded feedback. Everyone can have a view, and then it becomes a lot more easier to then move it from there on.
I'll uh, I'll tell you how we do it and how I've seen it doing it. I'm super excited looking at this. Like, this is literally why I love this space. I love technology solving real world problems that we struggle through. Right. For those listening
Right.
in, and I'm sure they do it the same way. Right. 5 people are in a room. You have 5 different Excel sheets literally put up, right? And then it's the job of the recruiter looking and copy pasting and making one doc. This, right? Uh, 2 3 people have contradictory views. One person has forgotten, didn't write, uh, right? And it's just ROI negative for everybody. You spent your time, your interviewing time, you've spent so much of the candidate's time, and ultimately at the debrief you have half baked information, right? And like I was in fact myself looking for such a tool where all of this gets caught in, right? Even if like the AI, we don't look at the AI scores, right? But I still have everything in one place, and it's fair for the candidates also.
Would you like to see what the end report would look like just because you go through such a grilling process? Would you like to see?
Yeah, please. I can show you the Excel sheet I use.
So
Oh,
this
that's
is
a
what the
report.
end report looks. So you say that this is the unverified information, resume score,
Hmm.
and this is your verified information, and then this is coming out of all the different interviews. You talk about all the different skills and competencies and bucket, which were high, which were low. You also talk about different critical feedbacks, and then you go into deep dive where you say that if XYZ skill was measured, this is X person's feedback, X interviewer's feedback, Y interviewer's feedback. If it was part of assessment, then assessment's feedback, and thereon and thereforth. So you have everything together in one place, and you have details to it as well, if need be. If you want to revisit and really, drill down on one particular candidate, that aspect is also possible.
Got it. So this is sort of tying the whole assessment plus the interviews, right? Multiple
Yeah,
rounds of interviews and bringing it to one place, right? Again, I'm sure this works across for bulk hiring, for campus, for technical, non-technical. It's the same, right? Wow,
yeah.
it's lovely. I had one question. We India is more English than English. Like, are you only English, or like able to understand Hindi and English, or is it only English at this point?
Um, Um, a big use case for us is hiring for frontline roles.
Hmm.
These roles can occur across hospitality, um, retail, logistics, BPO.
Hmm.
And you have caught on very good point that a lot of frontline roles are about identifying trainable talent.
Hmm.
One key aspect over there is the person should read and listen and understand English, but
Hmm.
they are not required to speak back in English. Their spoken skills are
Hmm.
usually evaluated vernacular, which is the ability to being answer to a customer. It's okay if they speak,
Hmm.
in a regional language.
Hmm.
So we have enabled that aspect on our platform as well, where mass hiring is happening in bulk, frontline hiring. The objective is to identify trainable talent. Um, and the outcome for a lot of these companies is that they have automated their entire screening layer, because now you can evaluate the functional skills, which can be their ability to read labels if it
Hmm.
is as basic as that, or ability to use a smartphone if it is as basic as that. That's being automated, and that in Indian context. Their communication, evaluation of communication, which is understanding English, that is being
Hmm.
evaluated. Ability to speak in vernacular. So we have gone down and made our assessments vernacular for
Oh,
this
okay.
particular section and this particular level of roles. And again, cognition brought down, which is required for their level, and behavioral skills which are relevant. For example, a lot of roles in hospitality need service orientation, where you're able to bring in good experience for the customer who is coming in, for example, to a QSR chain, or anywhere, or a retail store. So are you able to measure that? um, a big gap here has been, one, a lot of the assessments which have been built for frontline have been built in West. They have been
Hmm.
built with English context. Maths is happening in pounds. They have no idea what a pound is, right, or
Hmm.
a dollar. That gap is there. Um, they Communication is restricted to your ability to do synonyms and antonyms, and that level of English is
Hmm.
not required
Of
for
course.
someone who is there in India. Yeah, maths is being very repetitive, and that is because that's the proxy for cognition, and it goes slightly higher order than what's even required for their roles. And you'd be amazed to hear, but uh, there are platforms where a personality profiler administered to a person in a driver profile is same as a manager. So are we saying that we need to measure the same set of skills? That is the level of stark difference, and that is why there were never any assessments which were practically used in India. We focused on getting the sourcing funnel right, and last 3 to 5 years we have solved for that, right? Frontline roles getting in people is becoming easier, and all the big corporates and organizations are now facing the challenge that, I mean, there's this term called body replacing body, right? These roles were till a large point of time such roles, but now you have talent. You need to identify talent who are trainable, and you need to identify people. And there are no frameworks what to identify them for in Indian context, and then there are no tools to absolutely do that. So big gap there.
Hmm. True. Great. Okay. I have many questions, but in the interest of time, I think this was super helpful. But I still want to. I'm very curious about what's next. If you can just let our viewers, and I'm equally interested. Like, what's next for Unberry? Like, what other crazy thing? And then, honestly, that's super helpful. It's super helpful for the community. If I can see a lot of value just in 5 minutes of looking at this, I'm sure. And I operate at a relatively smaller scale. I can see, like what you showed me. If when you're interviewing 3,000 candidates, you cannot do it manually, right? An ATS barely is solving all of this. ATS is just a repository. You need technology, you need AI. Again, AI has become the dirty word, but AI is useful. It is what it is. And I'm so happy, like, so happy for you coming on, so happy for this conversation and what you guys are doing, because it's sort of helping our space, right? This space that, I'm so passionate about. And I keep saying, and because of sort of being in the space for a while, I've seen how we were the laggards of technology in the past, right? And when I say we, I'm talking of our people space, because when I started off in Darwin Box, right, I had to field questions of what is an HR tool, क्यों चाहिए, वो तो Excel में हो जाता है. To today, that's become the norm. I just, all I wish is that more products such as yourself and others come in and don't, at least we don't miss the AI bus, right? And I see that that's not happening. I'm so happy to see, look at so many tools which is using AI to really solve these problems. It's just a net positive for our function. Sorry for this monologue. It's just super passionate about it, and I'm really happy that we did this. So my question was this: what's next for Unberry? What are you doing next?
I think it was great to hear you relating to and sharing your experience around how technology has progressed. I loved kind of taking you through everything one because of you have so much interest and knowledge in the space, and you can see the application of good technology and solving for real life problems, and um, that happens across any good rich conversation we have. So I think first, thanks for enabling that for many more people out. Coming back to the, what's next. So there is obviously a long-term vision, and then there are steps that you take to achieve that long-term
Of
vision.
course.
So um, I spoke about the funnel, right? In the starting, it somewhere goes back to that. So in an organization, there are three talent journeys: talent acquisition, um, talent management, um, where you have L&D and performance, and then your internal mobility. We figured out that having verified actionable talent intelligence lies at the core of it, and we build the assessment because, if you have good rich information which comes out of a good assessment that can be used to not just hire people, which is painkiller
Mm,
across most of the organization. You can design personalized L&D journey. You can take
mm.
better decisions when you are doing performance evaluation because, for example, nine box, right? At this point in time, we at least have some objective data on performance, but
Wow,
that
that's an
potential
amazing use
part is,
case. I'm sorry to,
yeah,
sorry I broke it. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's something probably, yeah, a lot of people won't get it. Like, nine box is probably the perfect example, right? How we do nine box today is broken at the in middle of the performance. You ask the manager, does this person have great potential, right? I mean, that's just a silly question. The answer is always wrong, right? So tying this, amazing. All right, sorry, continue again. I just interjected because I see it. Yeah.
yeah. So that is the talent management journey, and then internal mobility, which is broken across. People are having aspirations to move from one role to another, identifying gaps, and then building in plans and line, which can be your upskilling plans, which can be your mentoring plans. Plans can come in
Hmm.
later, but
Hmm.
first knowing what can I use, what are the transferable skills, and do I have them or not, that bit. So across these three talent journeys, one common denominator is identifying actionable talent intelligence. We probably
Hmm.
see it as the core, and then the next step is to identify and to build now all these journeys um, in a way that with the workflows which are much more powerful and which are backed by the right technology as well. I mean, a lot of Gen AI that at this point in time, for example, is a outside plugin that you added a plugin that can create a JD. But to actually use the power of it, you need to reimagine the entire workflow, and you need to rebuild that so that it is part of your core rather than sitting as an add-on feature. So we are doing that for the first talent journey, which is the talent acquisition journey. We are creating that entire talent decision framework, which helps to get the candidate in, to move them from one stage to another,
Hmm.
to automate. Still, there are a lot of manual interventions which are out there. Automate all of that, and then to have the right plugin at each step. Which is, if you are doing a resume screening, that be backed by the best technology. If you're doing assessments, you have the most modern and holistic assessments that coming in. If you're doing in interviews, then you have all the information being curated and collected, and then all of this available in a single point so that you can take faster decisions as well. So we're kind of reimagining the talent journey so that comes in a couple of months from now, and then we'll do the same for internal teams. So okay, yeah.
Amazing. Amazing, right? So that's and I'm so happy like we got to see, I think, the first demo of what's coming. Would love to actually try it out, play with it when the tool actually goes live. Great, Vinny. I think
Yeah.
this has easily been the longest episode I've ever recorded, and rightfully so. So before
Right.
we sign off, first of all, thank you for coming on, sharing all about Unberry. A lot of listeners, this is not something that gets talked about too much in our space, right? Everyone just talks about recruitment, but not really the nuances behind it. Assessment for sure doesn't get talked about as much on LinkedIn, right? So I'm sure people took a lot away from this. But before we wrap up, just where do people find you if they want to connect with you, or where do they find Unberry for those who are still listening in after almost 1 or 20 minutes?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I can be reached out on LinkedIn. Please add me. I'm like very responsive over there. Vinny, if you search for Vinny Kabe on LinkedIn, you'll find me. Similarly, Unberry is on LinkedIn, and you can find us on our website as well, www.unberry.com. So yeah.
Cool. All right, Vinny. This was absolutely lovely. It was pleasure talking to you, seeing this, and I'm sure we'll again do another episode few months down the line when there's more products and we can sort of continue this riff.
Yes, we'll pick it up from here. It was absolute pleasure speaking to you, Nanak. You kind of deep dive and touched such depths of it, which probably I think this is the podcast that I've really enjoyed a lot because you love HR Tech products and you just kind of at the same point in time took it to depths, which I'm sure all your listeners will enjoy as well. So really, it was amazing to be part of this.
Thank you. Thanks for those kind words, Vinny. Thank you, Vinny. Yeah. Bye
Okay,
bye.
have a good day. Bye.
Bye.